Before you listen to this BBC podcast, I'd like to tell you about something else you might enjoy. My name's Alison Hindle, and I commission audio drama and fiction for the BBC. It's a great privilege, because I get to unearth stories people love. You should see the books and scripts covering my floor, from new talent and established writers as well as classics. The BBC has such a rich history of making great audio drama. We're still the largest producer in the world, and the popularity of podcasts means we can share what we do with even more people. So if you like to lose yourself in a gripping audio drama or book, find your next listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Daily Podcast. It's a daily dose of news, views and analysis for you to enjoy from our beautiful game. It's Thursday the 15th of August. Here's what's on the agenda today.
Mackay-Steven in, left-footed, sends it into the penalty area, swept towards goal, not once but twice, it's in! There is the equaliser!
After last week's late drama, can Kilmarnock triumph in Tromso? Also,
it's a fairy tale, as I said after the match, that St Mirren are competing with these teams. We're getting draws against teams like Brann, taking the game all the way. So we have to enjoy it, and we have to step up by another 10% to beat this team.
Can the Pied Piper of Paisley keep St Mirren's fairy tale alive away in Brann? And
we are 16th at the moment, but we have until the end of this season to try and right that to get as high as we can. Let's say that we don't and we finish 16th or anywhere outside the top 15, and there's a load of implications.
With the focus on European competition this week, we find out about the possible impact of Scotland's coefficient.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Great to have you along this morning, and great to be in the company of the great Michael Grant, football correspondent for the Scottish Times. Michael, morning to you.
Morning, Phil.
I seem to recall the last time you and I spoke was the morning after the night before in Frankfurt. All those weeks ago. My goodness, does the Euros seem a long time away?
Oh, it really does, eh? I was just thinking we haven't actually heard anything from Scotland since the night that we crashed out the tournament. So I think we're due an update, to put it mildly.
Not just an update, but also an update on what Steve Clarke's golf handicap is, because in the last few days on social media, just pictures of him and the team exploding around golf courses on the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm sure all the fans are delighted for them.
First question from Michael Grant for the Scotland Presser upcoming. Steve, how's the handicap this summer for you in golf? Listen, lots to discuss with Michael, including golfing prowess. We're also going to be hearing from Gavin Noon. Now, he's the man behind Scotland's coefficient on X. Really interesting to just summarise where we're at in coefficient terms for Scottish football, not just after Rangers' defeat earlier this week, but also what a win for Kilmarnock or St Mirren tonight would do for Scotland's standing in European football. So lots to get through. First, though, let's take a twirl through the Scottish football headlines. The Republic of Ireland striker Adam Idah has completed his permanent transfer from Norwich City to Celtic for an undisclosed fee. He says, everyone knew where I wanted to be. The 23-year-old has signed a 5-year deal. Away fans will continue to be barred from derbies between Celtic and Rangers, despite an agreement reached back in the spring for their reintroduction this season. Rangers have issued a statement saying they were informed on Wednesday that Celtic will make no allocation for away fans for the September Old Firm match. And Alex Gogic is a big doubt for St Mirren as they visit Brann in the second leg of their Europa Conference League third qualifying round tie. The Cypriot international and midfielder Kolan Boyd-Muntz will be assessed ahead of kick-off in Norway, and that adds to the injury concern over Mark O'Hara. Let's head to Norway then. Not many times, Michael, we can say that the focus of Scottish football is there, but we have this bizarre situation, I think it is, to say that Kilmarnock and St Mirren both play at the same time, on the same night, in the same country.
And I must admit, I'm equally worried about both of them as they go there. You're going to be talking soon about the coefficient, Phil, and I think that is in jeopardy, isn't it, tonight with the way things have gone. Rangers have already gone out of the Champions League, and listen, let's be realistic about it and slightly downbeat about it, but we could have Kilmarnock and St Mirren going out of the Conference League this week as well, and that will have consequences for the playoffs. But yeah, listen, they are both in with a chance. And I think Kilmarnock have got the stronger chance given the quality of opposition they're against. I think Brann are quite a little bit, quite significantly stronger than Tromso, and that's going to be a difficult one for St Mirren. But I think Kilmarnock do have a fighting chance. But their season hasn't really taken off yet, Phil, has it?
Well, let's focus on Kilmarnock first up. In Tromso, they made heavy weather of it last week, but they're making heavy weather of, as you say, the start to the Scottish Premiership. Bizarrely, that 3-0 defeat at the weekend against St Johnstone, the best way that I can describe it is it was a Kilmarnock performance that didn't look like a Derek McInnes performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, he's been kind of lamenting the quality of the goals that they're giving away this season in the first leg and also at the weekend there. Derek, he tends to hit a glass ceiling in these qualifiers, doesn't he? You know, he's been trying for years to get into the group stages with Aberdeen and never quite able to do it. I noticed that he's kind of recalled one of his great nights with Aberdeen ahead of this tie when they went to Groningen after a home draw and they won the away leg. And it took them through to the next round. And he's talking about the kind of spirit of that night and the memory of that night being something that might inspire at least him going into this match tonight. But they haven't taken off yet, Kilmarnock.
How do you think Kilmarnock fans will feel hearing their manager speak about a night that he had with a former club years ago, almost trying to tap into that for, well, if not a boost to himself, to try and gender some sort of belief within the Kilmarnock team after that heavy defeat last time out?
Yeah, I think they'll be okay with it, Phil. Yeah, I mean, I think Derek is still held in pretty high regard, isn't he, by the Kilmarnock fans after what he's done there. I think they'll think, well, if it helps him and if it potentially helps his team talk, then all the better. I mean, listen, Tromso or whatever they are, fourth from bottom from bottom of the Norwegian league. They're well into their season as well. They're 18 games in, I think. I mean, it shouldn't be beyond Kilmarnock at their best to get through this tie tonight. But I mean, listen, how many times have we been through this course with all the Scottish teams, and we think they're in the mix? I mean, my God, they nearly lost the home leg. You know, it was a kind of saving job right at the end. I do worry for Kilmarnock this season. I mean, that's 5 games in, still to get a win. It doesn't seem to have ignited for Derek yet, and it'll be a real blow for them if they go out of this round. Not just financially, of course. Yeah,
well, maybe tonight might be the spark that they need to ignite their season. There's live coverage of the game across Sports Sound Kilmarnock in Tromso. 2-2 from the first leg. Let's leave Tromso in the north and head southwest in Norway to Bergen, where St Mirren take on Brann. I was reading during the paper review this morning in Good Morning Scotland some of the comments coming from the Brann-Bergen camp, suggesting that they have such a bad taste in their mouth after the carry-on last week with the ball that wasn't given back to them from the throw-in, that they were going to, and I quote here, crush St Mirren tonight. And I was thinking, am I reading the script for Rocky 9 in Brann? Very strange to go into the second leg of a third qualifying Europa Conference match and hear the opposition speaking about crushing somebody.
Yeah, it's great though, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
I mean, let's be honest, we love this kind of stuff. You know, this is. I mean, I think there's also an element that we're not really used to players speaking like that in Scottish football. We our players tend to kind of dance around issues, don't they? We in the domestic scene. So it's great fun and it's very refreshing when you hear and you read quotes from a player coming out and just talking so brazenly about what they intend to do. But it does also suggest there's going to be a bit of needle to this match, doesn't it? You know, and that Brann are going to be fired up after what they regard as the injustice of St Mirren's late equaliser last week. listen, I mean, that might not be great for St Mirren, because I think Brann are a pretty accomplished side, and they looked the better side in the first leg for most of it. Again, it was a late leveler for St Mirren. Stephen Robinson's talked about it being a game changer if St Mirren can get through to the group stage. I mean, they've got an awful lot of work to do to think about that. They've got to get through this one somehow. I think they would then play Astana, is that right? In the playoff round. We know that Astana have got money behind them, and they would be strong favourites in the playoff round. I mean, listen, if either of these two teams, Kilmarnock and St Mirren, make it to the Conference League playoff, it's really a game changer for those clubs, because I mean, you're talking about maybe 2.5 million minimum, 3 million minimum coming in. I mean, that's big money, and given the turnovers of those clubs. But I can understand Stephen Robinson talking about it and life changing, game changing, and so on. But it feels an awful long way away to me, and I do fear for St Mirren this evening.
Michael, we're just going to hear about what the European matches mean for Scotland's coefficient. Both Rangers defeat earlier this week, and also looking ahead to Kilmarnock and Run. Just before I go through the back pages this morning, focused on the decision to have a lockout of away fans at the first two Old Firm games of this season. And regardless of the politics involved in that, as a football fan, it just disappointed me this morning that here we could potentially be focusing on Scotland's two teams in Europe tonight and everything that we've just spoken about. And yet again, we're having to focus on things happening off the park between Scotland's big two clubs. Now, this is realpolitik. I know this is Scottish football. It's Rangers and Celtic. I get all that. But it almost just feels like we've missed the chance to fully focus on this tonight when we wake up in the morning and we see the back pages covered with the same story rumbling on about Old Firm ticket allocation.
Yeah. Although, I mean, to defend the newspapers, I guess I can understand why they do it, because it's two enormous fan bases and an issue that they're both engaged with. Back in March, there seemed to have been an agreement reached. I mean, this issue has rumbled since 2018. Believe it or not. I mean, that's the last time you had what you would call the traditional level of Old Firm allocations for the derbies, and it's varied from several hundred to nothing over the following years. It looked like we had that an accord between the clubs, and it was going to be a 5% of the allocation. It's now clear that that's broken down. I'm a neutral in that I'm not a Rangers or Celtic supporter. But I just find it pretty exasperating that they can't both deliver on this 5% thing, because I do think the Old Firm game is better with that spectacle. I think everybody thinks that. I think everybody understands that it's better with a sizable away support in. But it kind of feels that we're back to square one a bit, doesn't it? I mean, we were almost there with an agreement, and now that's dissolved, and it's certainly not going to be anything for the first two derbies of the season. So let's see what comes with the subsequent ones in the early half of next year.
Well, after Rangers crashed out of the Champions League on Tuesday, and with so much focus on the European action tonight, I caught up with Gavin Noon. Now, he's the owner of the Scotland Coefficient page on X. It's really a go-to guide to find out how Scottish football is faring amongst all the other European nations when it comes to club football and the all-important coefficient. And he's been speaking about the potential implications of this week's results in Europe for Scottish football as a whole. Gavin, let's get straight to it. The implications of Rangers not making it further in Champions League qualifying, and indeed perhaps not getting into the Champions League itself. Just bring us up to date with what that means for Scottish football.
Well, the main implication will be for Rangers as a club, because the way UEFA distributes the revenue, the gap between the Champions League and the Europa League is so vast. So almost 75% of the money goes to the clubs in the Champions League. The Europa League is less than 20%. It's down at like 16, 17%. So they've probably lost out on £30 million, if not more, that they could have got if they reached the Champions League. So the main implication will be for them as a club. For Scotland's coefficient, it might not be as bad because obviously they're still guaranteed Europa League phase football, so that's them straight into the Europa League. They don't have to play in the playoff round. So historically, over the last 5 or 6 years, Rangers have done pretty well in that competition. So taking away the bonus points that they would have got in the Champions League, there's a good chance they can recoup that in the Europa League and perhaps perform better than they would have done in the Champions League. But given how they've looked in the opening weeks, I would say that's not even a given either.
And you're saying 30 million plus being missed out by not making the Champions League. How much would Rangers hope to make being in the Europa League?
Well, in the Champions League, it would have been 40 million before they even kicked a ball, and that's if they lost all 8 games, and that's their estimated income. In the Europa League, it's going to be more like £10 million. There is prize money on offer for each point that they make in the Europa League, but again, it's much less than in the Champions League. And then there's a sort of phased payment depending on where they finished in the 36-team league. So they could end up making another sort of 15 to 20 million if they were really good in the Europa League. That's obviously before ticket sales, but of course it's not at their stadium, so there'll be cost implications in that. So yeah, I would be surprised if they earns much more than 15 million this season.
And that's the difference in money. What's the difference in coefficient points for a Scottish side, say like Rangers, not making it into the Champions League but going on a run in the Europa League?
Well, yeah, the good thing is that the coefficient points on offer for each match are the same in all 3 competitions. So if you win in the Champions League, it's the same amount of points, which is 2 points for a win, as in the Europa League. The main difference is there's bonus points just for reaching the Champions League. So if you finish last in the Champions League, 36th place, no wins, no draws, doesn't matter, you're still guaranteed 6 bonus points. But you don't get that in the Europa League. So for Rangers to sort of make back the bonus points that they would have earned had they reached the Champions League, they would need to win a minimum of 3 of the Europa League games out of the 8 they will play. And even then, had they won even like 1 game or 2 games in the Champions League, again, there would have been a gap that they might not claw back.
So from a Scottish football point of view, and I always get texts and emails into the Good Morning Scotland programme when I speak about this, but because I always try and say if Celtic or Rangers or Kilmarnock or St Mirren or whoever is playing, I always say, Scottish football is hoping for a good victory tonight. And I know that, given the tribal nature of our game, there are fans that don't want other clubs to do well, etc. But from a Scottish football point of view, we're looking at Rangers to win 3 games in the Europa League to make up the coefficient points that they would have had if they'd have made the Champions League and lost every game.
That's exactly right, because it's 6 bonus points for just making the Champions League, and a win in the Europa League is worth 2 points. So if they win 3 Europa League games, hopefully that might even be enough to get them into the top 24 of the Europa League, which then they go into the knockout round, so there'd be more points on offer. Then they've made back, if you like, the bonus points that they could have earned in the Champions League.
And this doesn't affect Scotland's European places for next season, but the way the coefficient points work, it's the season after next. So we're always talking effectively 2 years ahead of any game.
Yeah, so the places awarded at the end of this season, as in who wins the league, who wins the Scottish Cup, that's all locked in. So that gets locked in from the end of the previous season. So at the end of this season, wherever we finish, that'll affect the places that are awarded at the end of next season, but it's actually for European football starting the season after that.
And we have dropped from 11th to 16th place in the coefficient table. So sketch a picture for us what that means for the season after next when it counts.
Yeah, that would be quite a devastating drop. So as you say, we are 16th at the moment, but we have until the end of this season to try and right that to get as high as we can. Let's say that we don't and we finish 16th or anywhere outside the top 15, and there's a load of implications. So we only enter 4 clubs instead of 5. So St Mirren, for example, they wouldn't have got into Europe had we been outside the top 15. The champions are already not guaranteed Champions League direct qualification, but instead of playing 1 qualifying round, they would play 3 qualifying rounds. Our runners-up at the moment, as you've seen with Rangers, they enter Champions League qualifications. Not anymore. If we're outside the top 15, they enter in the Conference League, and they would have 3 qualifying rounds. So that's a huge jump from 2, as it is now, the runners-up have 2 qualifying rounds to reach the Champions League. Next season, at the end of next season, if we don't get out of the coefficient predicament we're in, they would have 3 rounds just to reach the Conference League, and they obviously wouldn't be guaranteed any European football. So at the moment, Rangers are guaranteed Europa League because they lost, but they still drop into the Europa League. That goes if we finish 16th. Same for the Scottish Cup winners. So at the end of this season, whoever wins the Scottish Cup is guaranteed at least Conference League phase football because they play in the Europa League playoff round. And if they lose that, they drop straight into the Conference League. That then goes, they would have 3 qualifying rounds in the Europa League. If they lost one, they would then drop down into the Conference League, but it would still be in qualifying. They would still have 2 rounds to try and get through. So essentially, we're in a position now where 3 of our clubs are guaranteed league phase football this season, Rangers, Celtic and Hearts. If we finish 16th, we go to nobody is guaranteed anything. So the champions could lose Champions League qualifying round 2, drop down to Europa League qualifying round 3, lose that, drop down to the Conference League playoff and lose that. So that there would be a situation where the champions could not even have European football. So yeah, to summarise that, a drop to 16th is pretty dramatic.
So we need to stop dropping further down the coefficient table by Celtic, Hearts and Rangers all doing well in European competition. And also too on St Mirren and Kilmarnock. What would it mean for both of them to get through tonight in their matches in Norway?
Well, it would be a shock because they're both underdogs, but it would be fantastic. Only once before have we had all 5 teams still in European football come the playoff round. That was actually last season because Hibs and Hearts, they both qualified from this stage on the same night. Hearts beat Rosenborg and Hibs beat Luzern of Switzerland. It would be a fantastic achievement. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening, but they both scored in the last minute last week to keep the ties alive. They both do have chances as they go out to Norway. They are just up against it.
And if they were to get through those matches, will that bring a more positive coefficient look for Scottish football?
It would definitely be good news. The only downside is that points in qualifying are worth half. So they would, if they progress tonight, be that drawing and then going through on penalties or by winning the game, there will be coefficient points on offer. It won't be a lot, but it will be something. And then it guarantees them another 2 games each. They would then have the playoff round where there's more points on offer. And of course, if we could get one of them into the league phase, that would be one of the biggest achievements from a Scottish club in years because that's never happened before. We've never had 4 clubs in the group stage as it's been for the last 20 odd years. So it would be great. I hope one of them get through. Kilmarnock probably have the best chance given that their opposition's much lower in the league, but they're both away from home in the second leg, which is always tough.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Gavin Noon there, Scotland's coefficient guy on X. Really interesting to speak about what this week means for Scottish football. Not, of course, next season, because those coefficient standings are locked in, but for the season after that. Thanks to him. Thanks also to Michael Grant, who we had on earlier from the Times, the Scottish football correspondent for the paper. Thank you for listening. Live coverage of both St Mirren and Kilmarnock's games. Tune into Sports Sound tonight and online Radio Scotland Extra. Sports Sound starts at 5:30 with Jonathan Sutherland. The kick-off in both St Mirren and Kilmarnock's games, 6 o'clock. We'll be here with the Scottish Football Daily podcast back tomorrow, so when that drops you'll get an alert to tell you to press play and find out the very latest from our beautiful game. For now though, enjoy your football and we'll speak again soon.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.